Okay, Fogel. What's Cubism? Squares. Cubes. Geometry. Cubism tends to be one that's easy to pick up on and one that people tend to be confident with. What's interesting about Cubism is it kind of starts with Cezanne. Which one was Cezanne again? Yeah. So he did the square brushes. So Mount Saint Victoire, right? He did the square brushes on the mountain. And that was kind of his thing. We saw his work a little close up at Norton Simon. A lot of us got to zoom in with our own eyeballs, see those square brushes. And other artists are going to look at what Cezanne did, artists like Picasso and Brucke, and they're going to be like, oh, but what if that's the whole piece? And they really like the squares. So we have two forms of Cubism that kind of emerge at the same exact time, because why not? It does take place in early 1900s, so 1907, 1918. It is a French art movement because France is the new Italy as far as where most of the art happens. So the first phase of Cubism is analytical Cubism. So we're going to say analytical on three. 1, 2, 3. Analytical. So analytical Cubism is more about like neutrals and lines and muted colors. It's more of what Brucke does. And then there's synthetic Cubism. So synthetic on 3. 1, 2, 3. Synthetic. Good. So synthetic Cubism is that Picasso Cubism. It's more like looking at something, deconstructing it, and leaving a lot more bright, colorful shapes. Sometimes they're doing collage. It's like before collage becomes a thing, synthetic Cubism is that path towards collage. They really look at like taking ideas and objects and fragmenting them. So this is what analytic Cubism is. It's not always neutrals, but it is more liney and a little bit more like, I think of it as like kind of intense and dreary. Like there's a negative energy around analytical Cubism. Personally, even like the rainbow ones, I'm just still like there's something heavy in it. Where synthetic Cubism is more your bright, your colorful, kind of pretty Cubism, and that's where you start seeing like newspaper clippings, magazine stuff, extra materials that aren't necessarily oil on canvas. So those are the two types, which kind of helps us compare Brucke and Picasso. So our first artist, George Brucke. We're going to say Brucke on 3. 1, 2, 3. Brucke. So don't get confused by the Q. It's just like the guy in Pokemon. We're looking at 1911. This is like right around the start of World War I. Hence it being a little bit darker. The world is at war and it's getting a little intense. And it's called The Portuguese, which is interesting because you look at it and you're like, how Portuguese? So I want you guys just take a quick second and try to find what do you think the meaning behind this piece is just by looking at it. If you were to BS it on an FRQ, talk to your group. right, let's look at some meaning. What do we think about this piece? What? Ugly. Boo.
I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily. I mean, please don't have opinion, but like, it's very dark and sort of grimy in a way.
Mhm.
Like, it's not in like exactly a negative way.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. It sort of reminds me of like how, like, in a way, sort of like the French War.
Oh, yeah. I like that comparison. Good.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Based off those, that sort of grimy.
Yeah.
Sides of what I imagine the French to be like.
Yeah, that's very analytical cubism. That's where you're seeing those muted colors, that grime, that intensity.
Yeah, the colors.
Yeah. And even the texture, if you see the horizontal brush strokes in there, add to that, like, grossness.
Yeah.
For sure. Other thoughts? There we go. So I love that. We're breaking tradition, right? These artists, they're making bolder moves. The Impressionists were the first ones to kind of release the floodgates. Now everyone's trying to question art. What's the point of art? What are we feeling? How are we going to present art? Because everything is, you know, when it's oil on canvas, everything's oil on canvas. And yet, depending how you do it, it's going to be such a different experience for each artist. So yes, definitely they're breaking that tradition. Because if we're calling it the Portuguese, what would you assume this would be about? Yeah, like a Portuguese person, because it's like the Portuguese. So it would be a portrait, right? Do we see a portrait in there? Don't even see anything. Yeah, like, is there anything recognizable going on? Squares, color, circles. There's some words in here. Yeah, interesting. This is like a big old Rorschach test. I always see like a guitar right in here. I don't know if it's supposed to be. I just know he did musical instruments sometimes. That helps. Any other thoughts about the Portuguese? It's a weird one.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's another color code of it. This is other ones of Brucke's work. Brucke, again, he typically is in that analytical cubism. Some of them are more abstract than others. This is where I'm like, I saw a guitar because look at how many guitars he's done. That's definitely a guitar, 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 guitar. That one says Mozart, so you're like, ah, yeah, it's music. Because the instruments, if you've taken an art class, instruments tend to be fun things to paint, draw, sculpt, etc. So something very interesting. There he is, just a normal looking guy. So when we get into the theories of Brucke, it's rejecting that tradition, right? So even Cézanne, who was seen as being outlandish and all that kind of stuff, at his time, Brucke is pushing it further. And the reason for this is the idea of truth. We're going all the way back to Plato from Greece. And what is truth? How can art be as true and real as possible? It's a big philosophical question. So artists are all going to have a different approach to saying what the truth is. So just like, again, to do a little chit chat, if you were to paint something or make something out of anything, whatever your medium is, that represents the truth of life, what is the truth? Talk to each other, what would that look like, or doodle it? What is the truth? That's actually would be a fun one.
I just have a phone for that one.
so we've already got some interesting ideas. We have like the coffin as truth, like that's where it all ends, right? It's death. That's really deep. And then you're saying like an old man. You want to describe it?
Yeah, like an old man in like a storm, just like reminiscing about his life.
It's really cool. So there's like a timelessness with both of those. It's really cool. Anyone else come up with something?
I'm gonna be actually genuine. Maybe the truth is exactly that there is okay, I hear it won't be here, but truth is is there isn't exactly truth itself is actually more of a construct if anything. And only depending on like what's it called? Like I can't exactly describe it, but like it's more of a human construct that we're so fascinated with on the truth. It's just sort of in a way that we think in a way, but in obvious some in some cases there's a such thing there is such thing as truth. It's just something that I'm so fascinated with finding out. It's just a
Welcome to philosophy class. Yes, we're delivering on Plato, right? No, sorry. That is exactly what they're asking themselves, right? Because truth is a human construct. Truth is just a word that we assign to something that is this pure ideal of perfection, and what even is that?
that's what I meant.
Yes.
I can't get it up.
No, but that's perfect because that's when we are drawing and painting and whatever, we are approaching it as our truth. And what that means to every single person is totally different. And it's influenced by culture and personal lives and where you're at in that moment and whether your tire blew up this morning or that happened to me. It's been a day. So my, yeah, woo, that's my truth. So I think artists start going into that philosophical zone because art was so forever Royal Art Academy saying landscapes, portraits, still lifes, genre, historical, that's the truth. And when people tell you what your truth is supposed to be for years and years and years, finally getting the freedom to break from that and explore what your truth is, whatever that means, is exactly what's happening in art that we're seeing.
That's exactly what I meant.
Yes.
I just didn't know how to get it out.
It's perfect because
basically,
it's complex.
Yeah, everybody has their own truth. Everybody has their own set of ideals and their own set of their own perspectives of life.
Mm-hmm.
And, just how they view things.
Yes. And then processing all of that, Brucke's approaching a truth of Cubism that's different than Picasso's approach of Cubism. And then at certain points, depending on how cocky these artists are, they're going to start saying my truth is correct. And that's where we start getting into that weird zone where it's the Royal Art Academy again, saying that there's one truth. So keep that concept, big concept, huge concept in your mind though, because that is the background of every single one of these pieces, is what is truth in art. So for Brucke, part of that truth is that they're living in the early 1900s. Technology is changing, music is changing, culture is changing, and all around him is this era of modernity, modern times. Modernity just sounds fancy, right? So he's approaching Cubism as a truth of the modern world, and the modern world is broken up. It is fragmented. It is not nature and landscapes and perfect portraits. It's snapshots, it's moments, it's photography, it's cars, it's all this energy of a day all in one picture. So why capture photography like realism when the world is so boom, 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 right? And it changes every split second. Every second we move forward, it's gone, it's dead, that's history. So Brucke is capturing that chaos all in one piece. So when he titled it The Portuguese, he often titled things without any regard to what was in them. Yeah. So he's like, I want to put it there to make people think and try to find things, but that's not the point. He could call it whatever. He could call it chicken noodle soup. It wouldn't matter because you would still approach it and look for truth within it. And in doing that, you have this conversation in your head. So Brucke is a huge movement forward in the art world, but more famously is going to be Picasso. You guys know Picasso? You heard Picasso before this class? We love Picasso. He has the funny faces. So we're going to say Picasso on 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. And then here we have the very complicated French title. So it's Le Demoiselle. We're going to say Le Demoiselle on 3. I'm going to say it one more time. Le Demoiselle. 1, 2, 3. Good. De Avignon. De Avignon on 3. 1, 2, 3. So Le Demoiselle de Avignon all together. You just ruined it for me. Le Demoiselle de Avignon. 1, 2, 3. Again, when in doubt, put a little ha-ha into it and you're fine. So 1907, oil on canvas. So we're still in the oil zone, but compared to Brucke, what are we looking at? Color. The subject matter wise, what's the subject? Naked women. Yeah, it's naked ladies. I've never seen a naked lady in art. What? Crazy. How are these naked ladies different than the previous naked ladies we've looked at? They look dumb. They are more abstract. How? Their faces don't look like faces. Why? They're deconstructed. There we go. What does that mean? They are scary. They're broken down. Yes. What's broken down? Their forms. And how are they broken down by their forms? Shapes and lines. What shapes? Geometric shapes. What lines? Actual lines. Good. So descriptive lines. In what directions? Everywhere. Are they curvy lines? Straight lines? Yeah. Yeah, rigid. That's a good one. Yeah. So that's, again, where you don't want to leave blanks on an FRQ. Don't let them guess. You don't want to just say it's deconstructed. Cool, but deconstructed how, why? Like, go further, right? So yeah, we're looking at a very different approach to the nude female, right? And the way he's presenting these females is very different. They do look scary, right? What is intimidating about these figures? Their eyes. They're staring directly at you. Mm-hmm. It's big, yes. Oh yeah. So it's big. So we're looking kind of life size, which is always purposeful, right? You choose the size of your canvas for a reason. Why would he make it big? Okay, yes, to emphasize the effect of the painting. So if it was super tiny, it doesn't have that same, like, right? What pieces were typically the large pieces in Royal Art Academy? Important people, yeah, so like royal portraits. Of the categories, aside from royalty, what other ones were big? Historical. So your historical / allegorical, mythology, whatever, those ones tend to be big because the stories are big. So a lot of artists, when they're choosing their scale, are still talking about the Royal Art Academy in that way, where it's like, no, but now this is the big one. Courbet would work big about real people and realism to show how real people are as important as those historical paintings. Picasso's doing this large scale sort of portrait to kind of make you uncomfortable. Just like Manet's Olympia, remember the prostitute one? Where she's like locking eyes and she's a little abstracted. She has like really tiny feet for some reason. And there's that moment where you walked in and saw the prostitute and she's like, what? Same thing. They're prostitutes again, right? So prostitution's still very big thing as part of French culture. It's the thing no one talked about, but everyone kind of engaged in, including Picasso. Picasso hated women though. Like, hated women. He had a wife, but also had several male lovers. Don't know why he had a wife. Because he thought women were scary and intimidating and didn't like them at all. So, great. So that's part of the reason why they're really intimidating and scary, is because that's how he felt about women. Woo! Here's Picasso. Here's him a little bit older. Here's him a little bit younger. He was also a ceramic artist, and a lot of times people are like, oh, Picasso with the weird faces, he can't actually paint or anything. But that's, again, always an active choice. He was very, very skilled. This is from his blue period, where he was depressed and he just painted in blue. Poor baby. Here's another famous piece, Guernica, which I hope one day they switch to this one. It's about war, because he's Spanish, and there's a lot of war stuff happening in Spain at the time, just like Goya's reaction. This is like later Spain. So we're seeing his look at the traditional female nude, but in this more abstracted style. It's him like saying, yes, compare my work to the others. I'm better because I'm approaching it differently. They all have egos, right? He's still using oil on canvas. It's still the traditional media, but he's breaking it. He's deconstructing it. He's saying Cubism is equal to the past. It is the same as Impressionists. It's the same as the Royal Art Academy. My work is important. He's also bringing back primitivism. Woo! What was primitivism again?
Depictions of older arts or
Yes.
it's like really pushing older cavemen.
Yes. Yeah. So it's the idea of like going back to the primitive people of modern Africa and Asia and the Pacific. Yay! So this is post the like initial colonization period. Africa's been carved up. Their stuff has been destroyed and taken and all that kind of stuff. The stuff that we learned in Africa was around this time period. It's content area 4 time. It's not earlier. So they're looking at really cool masks like we did, but he's saying, ooh, those are scary. Put them on the scary ladies. Because they're trying to like trick you because they're so pretty and stuff. They're getting you to do things with their manipulation, like these African voodoo things. Like, yeah, it's that's why primitivism is a problem. Yeah. But he's also, so artists, there's the artists out there that are like, oh, I'm so different and so special, so I'm the best. Picasso is kind of like that. We get this idea of the avant-garde. So avant-garde, we're going to say avant-garde on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Avant-garde.
So avant-garde just means kind of like out there. It's out of the box. It's super creative. It's not the norm. So avant-garde becomes super popular. So when we go to the Broad, you'll see all this different approach to the avant-garde. It'd be like if I don't know, walked around with a bowl on my head and said, yep, I'm the best because I'm different. And then everyone's like, you know what, you're right. And they start putting bowls on their heads. That's the idea of the avant-garde. And then it becomes not avant-garde anymore. So that's what Picasso is trying to do, is be different. So he's painting a brothel, which is shocking. He's painting women not super seductive, which is supposed to be shocking. He's painting African masks because, ooh, Africa's spooky. And he's doing it all in this Cubist style, which is shocking. He is trying to make people uncomfortable because he's different. So his purpose is for people to go like, oh my God, and then talk about it. And we're going to see that later in the contemporary one where it has the Pink Panther. Did you guys see the Pink Panther one? We hate Pink Panther. Where Coons is trying to be shocking. And people talk about it. And now he's got the balloon dogs everywhere, and people are like, woo, balloon dog. Love that piece. Yay. Moving on to German Expressionism. Out of Cubism. Yes.
When I first saw the Metropolis poster right there, that reminded me of a certain it's called a Ghost album.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're inspired by German Expressionism.
Yes.
Yes.
I noticed that in their albums. I'm just like,
Yeah. Let's go.
Yes. Also, we use like cathedral stuff in either their music videos and one of their albums. It was like all the live concert songs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was called. I think it was called something of worship. I don't know, because Ghost is very.
Yes.
Yeah, they're very. Like in their style at least, they're very gospel. But
Yes.
music, like they sound like no place and
Yeah. They're a good mishmash of everything.
I know.
All right, German Expressionism. So, okay, I love this topic. I'm going to try not to talk too much about it. World War I. That was like one of my specialties when I went to college, right? I loved World War I. How confident are we in knowing World War I stuff? Okay, a couple people like got it, and most are like, meh. So World War I's not the Hitler one, just to clarify. This is the one that it's the entangling alliances one, where everyone's allied with different people, and then Franz Ferdinand gets shot in Sarajevo, kicks off a whole world war because Serbia was allied with Austria-Hungary, which is allied with Germany, and then they're declaring war on each other because England was allied with France, which was allied with Russia, which was allied with US, which was allied with China, and everyone's just fighting each other because one best friend attacked a different best friend. World War I. And then they went into the trenches for 4 years and fought over 100 feet of land and got nowhere. And it was the most destructive war ever, and millions died. Until World War II, then that was the most destructive war ever, and more millions died. Yay!
And then towards the end of World War II, adding on.
Yeah, that's all wrapped up in that number. We love it. So Germany. Germany's really interesting in all of this because Germany's going to be the Hitler one, right? But before Hitler, Germany was such a mishmash of cultures. Do you remember when we looked at maps and all of a sudden Germany exploded into a bunch of tiny little countries?
Yeah.
Ish. So Germany's always been kind of behind the rest of Europe in all of this. We haven't talked a lot about German arts since Charlemagne back in Holy Rome. The fibulae, the looped fibulae, that's the last big German piece we've talked about. We get to the 1900s in Germany, and they are trying to catch up, but also be different than France and England because they're German. So they want to be more avant-garde. They want to be more of the artsy country, be more creative, let their artists kind of express themselves, and that gets to German Expressionism. Movies also are now in existence. So this is going to be the early onset of film. One of the earliest, the earliest sci-fi film that exists is Metropolis. It is in the German Expressionist style. Tends to be more abstract. There's not going to be a big plot. The art is going to be very blocky and blacks and grays to kind of match the weird feelings that the Germans are having approaching World War I. They're on the losing side. They get blamed for the whole war, just for happening to be the ones that kind of made it to the end. It's yikes. So if you want all of World War I explained a little bit better than that, oversimplified, great video. Don't have time for it. So just some imagery of World War I to kind of place it in our brains, because this is the background of our German Expressionist piece. Here. So we have memorial sheet for Karl Liebknecht. So Liebknecht on 3. I'll say it one more time. Liebknecht. 1, 2, 3. Liebknecht. And then we have Kathy. It's just Kathy. I know it looks intense, but it's Kathy Kollwitz. Anytime you see the W, it's a Z sound. So Kollwitz. Kollwitz on 3. 1, 2, 3. Kathy Kollwitz. So 1919 to 1920, this is post-World War I. This is pre-Hitler. We're looking at a woodcut. So what's a woodcut again? Yeah, it's print, right? You're carving into wood. Perfect. So it's a relief carving. It's like the stamp. And Kathy Kollwitz, you can see German Expressionism really well here. Is that a hand? Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take advantage because earlier, because you was mentioning like, you know, Hitler and Free Hitler. I actually heard that Hitler actually fought in this World War, and there's actually this one, there's actually this one bit where like he was actually a messenger or something, and he was gonna get shot by a British soldier, but then this British soldier was like, you know what, I should probably let him live another day. It can't be that bad.
Whoops. Had the chance to kill Hitler, didn't it? Yeah, Hitler also likes to play up the fact that he did more than he actually did. He's a loser, and we get to all laugh at him. Haha, Hitler sucks. Yay! So, looking at the piece, what do you notice about the proportions, the human form?
Very intense, what's it called? Very, well, not only is there like a lot of emphasis on the crowd behind the breathing man, on the coffin, but also like there's an interesting sort of like details on the face, like shadows and the overall expression part of.
What? Their heads are really big, yeah.
They're really big too.
Definitely. Hannah, you had your hand up.
Big old hands.
What?
Big old hands.
Big old hands. Yeah, so we have value is huge here, right? Anytime you have a print, they're really playing with value, and she's really emphasizing the darks. So if it's a lot of dark, what's the emotion gonna be? Dark, sad, heavy, right? And then we have the emphasis on the heads and the hands. Yes.
Faces are really like sunken in.
Yeah, they're sunken in. There's like a weird approach to that bone structure, making them almost look skeletal. So why is she emphasizing the heads, the hands, and that kind of skeletal structure? Yes, so that we have a figure, this is about death. They're leaning, look at that implied line, she's cute, we love her, towards that body, and all of the choices of proportions are creating that emotion. That sad, that feeling, that pull towards the person. Look at the little light around them versus all the dark here. Big hands, resting, covered, like a moment of comfort amongst these really sunken, depressed faces. The point for Kollwitz is to emphasize the emotion. It's back to the Catacomb of Priscilla. Remember the praying? Hands were big, heads were big, because that's the emotional part of a human. We talk with our hands and we express with our face. So German Expressionism's going back to that same concept. And Kollwitz was really a master of that. And you can see her approach here. It's even the woodcut itself has an energy to it in those lines where you feel how she's carving it away and creating the emotions herself. Look at the movement of those lines. Yes, it creates form, but it also creates an emotional attachment. Kollwitz, there she is right there. Also, yay, a lady artist. She's known for these kind of darker wood blocks, but she did do a lot of different printmaking and drawing and charcoals. She tend to work in the black and white zone because that's very German. Her work is really all emotion. It does have registers coming back. So there's a top, a middle, and a bottom. We have this very tight, positive space pretty much throughout, but the light at the bottom creates a sense of brevity, right? The mourned. So we have the mourners, the act of mourning, and the mourned. So almost like Christ's lamentation, but now it's for a political figure. She didn't care about politics. She was like, whatever, I'm getting paid. But she was okay with kind of promoting this person's, the Liebknecht's political agenda. Again, it was not necessarily her personal politics, but she did it with printmaking. It's the like newspapers, right? You're passing messages. It's propaganda. She's getting paid for the work. She was typically a pacifist. She didn't like promoting any war stuff. So the fact that this one's about mourning the loss of someone who was an activist is her even pushing past that pacifism just a little bit. I love, so side thing about like how intense World War I is as far as a change in culture. My favorite quote was always that people rode in on horses and left in tanks. We're seeing a lot of change happening in Germany, in Europe, in US. Technology is going to get crazy really fast. Like literally they came in on horseback and then tanks got developed within the same 4 years that it was going on. Crazy stuff. Karl Liebknecht, he was part of a German Social Democratic Party, which led towards this Weimar Republic. It's a lot of background German history stuff, and I apologize that we don't have a ton of time. But she's kind of memorializing him without talking about his politics, because he leaned on the communism side of things. Communism popular, it's pre-Stalin, but Lenin's here, so communism in Russia has started, so it's gonna spread. Yes, John Lennon ruling Russia. All right, German Expressionism. Next one. We're going through it. We have Die Brucke. Die Brucke.
I thought it was like because
Yes. Die Brucke. So we're gonna say Die Brucke on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Die Brucke.
Good. So Die Brucke is a smaller art movement within the same kind of time period. It's the only artist we have is Kirchner. His style is really weird. But Die Brucke was a smaller group that said we're the bridge between like the past and the future. We are taking German Expressionism and pushing it even more modern. So it's a lot of the same stuff as German Expressionism, it's just got color now. So Die Brucke is German Expressionism, but it's a little bit more sexual and it's got pretty color. That's the difference. See? It's the same but different. So we have Kirchner. Kirchner on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Kirchner.
So Kirchner, 1915, so after World War I still. Self-portrait as a soldier. Fun thing about Kirchner is that he wasn't a soldier. So he depicts himself as a soldier with his hand cut off. He's like, oh, I got injured in the war. Look at me, I'm so important. But he like signed up, was like, I'm an artist, I need to do my art. He rode a tank, I think, once, and then he bounced. He was like, I'm out, guys, see ya. So he wasn't really a soldier, but it's kind of, I guess that's not a thing anymore. There was like this group of people that are like, yeah, I served in Nam, and like never actually saw war. They just stayed in Arizona, but during the Vietnam War, some people are weird, man. But he wanted kind of the accolades because he's Kirchner, and that's what he did. The interesting thing here is that we are seeing this transition. Space is getting really funky. It's flattened, but it doesn't feel flattened. Like, it doesn't make sense perspective-wise. Women's bodies are still getting a little bit weird. That's a woman because we see the bits, but it's not sexual, but it is very sexual, of like where everything is pointed and angled and framed. He's depressed and he's showing his emotions, which is new.
And it looks like he doesn't have eyes.
Yes, and he doesn't have eyes, so you lose that expression there. So that's where German Expressionism, all here. De Brucke, nothing. So that huge shift. This is their sign saying, we're De Brucke and we're so cool. Here's some of his other work. We saw some at Norton Simon. It's funky. This one looks like it was made in the 70s, but it wasn't. I don't like Kirchner. He was another primitivist. Oh, Nietzsche. Do you guys know Nietzsche? No. So he's a philosopher. You take psychology beyond AP psychology. Nietzsche is like the guy. He said nothing matters. Basically, what's the point of caring about anything? Because it doesn't matter. Nihilism was his thing. So that gets popular. De Brucke is like, heck yeah, nothing matters, let's go. Which makes sense when people fought in trenches for 4 years over 100 feet. I just waxed a ton of philosophy at you guys, and I apologize. We got deep today. So I gave you guys some packets last time. That's homework. All of them. We're finishing it. So I put the slides up. So social realism is where we kind of stopped, I think. Or did I make you guys do surrealism yet? No. Surrealism, you're annotating. Yeah, so I gave that one. Social realism is just kind of like pointing arrows. Harlem Renaissance is cool. Abstract expressionism, we're gonna do some art. I wanted to give you guys a chance to do some art before the test. Pop art, architecture, we're not gonna talk about early modern sculpture because we saw it, most of us. And then straight photography we're not gonna talk about. So next class I'm picking up with constructivism. Crazy. I'm gonna check one-pagers real quick. Sorry.